Afternoon, everyone. So I think this is, I've been told, going to be quite a popular and interesting discussion roundtable, though we're sitting in a line. So unlike Fiona, we don't have a fireplace. But my name's Shane Duncan. I am allegedly an industry expert, and I'm the moderator for the CEO Roundtable today. So, but Tommy Canatra, I think everyone pretty much knows everyone. Tommy from Canatra, Kristen from Med Relief, Ian from Altum, and Reese from Montu. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating today. So I think I want to do one thing first, which is to go back. So when you first started your journey, or got into this medicinal cannabis space, you made some assumptions in your business plans, and this is a time to be vulnerable. Sometimes you might have made a wrong assumption, or something hasn't quite gone to plan. But I'm just really interested to know, when you started to where you are today, what's worked and maybe what hasn't gone so well. Maybe we'll start with you, Tommy.
Thanks, Shane. Put me on the spot. What worked and what didn't work? What didn't work?
A lot has worked for you.
So if we go back 7 years, it's been about 7 years since the industry started, and I think the most difficult challenges was it hadn't been done before. So here we are trying to put this fantastic therapeutic resource into this, you talk about the square peg in a round hole. We have to kind of introduce it to a pharmaceutical supply chain, so that's been the biggest challenge, I think. I think we have a great environment in Australia to do that. We just need all the stakeholders to kind of join forces, whether it's the regulator or the industry growers or distribution or the healthcare services. So I don't know if
One thing that you thought was going to happen that hasn't happened in the 7 years.
People talk about legalisation, recreational cannabis. Well, we do have legal cannabis framework. Did I think it would change from the original days of 2016? I don't think so.
Cool. Thank you. Kristen.
For us, we saw the opportunity to pioneer an industry, and I think that's probably why most of us are here in the room today. For our two co-founders, they saw the medicine as a revolutionary medicine, and they formulated our business plan on a train in Canada, of all places. So in that respect, it's been an exceptional journey. And for us, we've always been really medically focused. We're aspiring to be a pharmaceutical company. We've always worked on collaboration, with the regulators, the TGA, the ODC. We've partnered with doctors, pharmacists, I think through that collaboration, it's really helped, drive this industry forward in a really positive way. So, that's from, I guess, the positive sense. We've stayed very true to our core business model, thanks to our two co-founders and our new partnership with Aurora. Looking forward to what the future holds. One thing I would have liked to have seen progress a little bit quicker, I've only been in the space 18 months. I've consulted to our two co-founders since 2016 in legalisation, but one thing I would have liked to have seen progress faster is the driving laws. Patients are being unfairly discriminated against. We worked with B. Mohammed at Astrid last year with the Drive Change initiative, and that's one thing that we're really passionate about and obviously keen to see continue.
Terrific, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's working. Yeah, look, and absolutely, Drive Change, huge piece of work for all of us. Look, again, what worked, for those that don't know, we entered the Asian market first, learned some key lessons there, but I think, really what we've done as a business, same, vision, mission, values. One of our values is breaking new ground, and I think everyone in this industry breaks ground in what we do on a daily basis as we put forward agendas and try to make change. So look, again, for us, we stick firm to that and our values, which helps guide us. I think one of the challenges we all face in industry, and particularly this sector, is just some of the regulations. Where are the lines? What's being enforced, what's not, what's a guideline, what's a guess. I think we're all flying fairly blind on that at the moment. So we'd love some more certainty, but at the same point, I think we're still early. This industry is still quite early.
I just want to pick up So breaking new ground is tiring, continually breaking new ground. How do you keep your energy up?
I joked I wasn't grey before this industry. Look, I don't know. I think it's hard, you know. Rinse, repeat, wash it off, go again, you know.
Awesome. What's the question again?
So when you started and you made a bunch of assumptions about what you were going to do and what your business was going to be, how close to that today? Is that what you were thinking, and what are some of the things you've learned on the path?
Yeah, 180. We thought the market had reached an inflection point in 2019, thought that the time was right to come out with a range of oils to get out there, educate prescribers on their place. We found very, very quickly the amount of contact, the frequency of touch points. It was potentially a little bit too early for us. We completely pivoted our business model purely based on the feedback from patients, off the back of a crowdfund that was pretty successful at the time. We noticed that more and more patients were coming through. They were having frustrating conversations with their doctor. So we flipped it all on its ear. We started referring patients in to local practices that we'd educated, trying to set up a clear and fair fee structure that was more in line with general practice. And throughout that process of trying to create more efficiency, create more scale, serve patients better, reduce costs, we just built and built and built. So yeah, a completely different direction to where we started. I think one thing that we've done well and continue to do well is really prioritise the direction of our business. While we didn't get it right early on, and I was probably a big reason for that. I thought we're trying to treat chronic conditions. You don't do that with, you know, rapid onset, short duration products being flower. So we're a little bit slow there. But the way that we survey, ask patients for feedback and guide the development, the expenditure, you know, that's the reason we built warehouses, and I'm really proud of the way that we continue to do that. The guys have nailed it. You know, driving laws, I'm surprised that we haven't buttoned those down yet. One of those pesky things.
No, absolutely. I think, look, probably the message that all of you've got is that it's not a linear path. You know, it's going to be it's a journey, to use a cliche, but it is, you know, it moves around, and being nimble and flexible and breaking plenty of new ground and having a crack at things, though some work, some don't, you know, is the message for everybody, I suppose. So let's flip that over. What's the next 12 months look like for the industry? We'll start with you, Reece, this time.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really interesting. We keep hearing about consolidation, but it never appears to come. I think we all thought that there was going to be a whole lot of change with TGO 93, but it doesn't appear to have come. The decline in retail price for patients. I think the rise of compounding flower at a pharmacy level and flower used for compounding on clinic formularies, I think is an interesting area that probably might be tightened up a little bit as well. I think access, I believe we're still growing. We haven't seen our patient acquisition cost increase, which tells us there's still a clear demand for telehealth services. And of course, there's always demand for face-to-face consults as well, which is what we're hoping to tack on this year. So for me, I'll really be sitting here with the popcorn out, waiting to see what consolidation looks like, how lower retail prices impact cash flow and availability of product.
Yeah, big question. Look, I think there has to be a level of M&A to a degree, or distress, you know, with some groups. I think we're starting to see that on the ASX. Unfortunately, you know, over the years in the cannabis industry, there's been an incineration of cash and you know, sort of investor returns. So, look, the investor community is pretty gun shy at the moment around cannabis, be that, you know, listed, private, whatnot. I think, look, there's not a lot of barriers to entry into our market. You know, I think people, you know, it's a medical product, etc. But, you know, it doesn't cost anything to get an import permit. So anybody can bring in flower, and so what we're seeing is a lot of these groups that have tried, and we've got over 700 products. I've heard over 800 products. Don't know. I think brands have doubled in 18 months. You know, it must be exhausting for prescribers being approached by all these new names and companies and products and strains and all the rest. So It's just been frenetic for the past 12. So I don't see it slowing down until I think a few of those groups realise that this is actually very hard to do and to do well. Staying in stock, I've heard that mentioned a lot of times today. It's something we work really hard on at Kime Medical, is making sure we are in stock for our patients to enable accessibility. So we'll strive to continue to do that, but it doesn't make it easier. So I think there's going to be a lot more competition. I think prices are probably going down because I think people are getting a bit tighter and need to capture market share or try to live a growth aspiration because the international headlines are saying it's going like this. So I don't think that's going to slow down. So it's going to be a busy 12 months, that's for sure.
Yeah, for us, I think the good news is the future is very bright. We're one of the fastest growing federally legal markets in the world. There's about 60 countries now that are pursuing a pathway for medical cannabis, and I think Australia is primed to be a higher growth market, and I firmly believe that. I think what we're seeing, to touch on the comment there, is supply is exceeding demand, and there's market forces that are forcing an equilibrium, and that's what we're seeing sort of play out. So just because there's companies exiting, it doesn't mean it's doom and gloom. It effectively just means that there's market forces at play, which is balancing the equation between supply and demand. I think in that sense, the future for Australia is very bright. Obviously some headwinds at play, but I think the industrious nature of Australians and Australian companies will endure and see a really successful market leading the way for the global landscape, really, in cannabis.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful to see more of our local supply chain be part of the equation. I think I'm going back to the first question, what would I have liked to have seen, and then I'm going to ask you what the second question was. But here we are in Australia, we've got a fantastic product. It'd be great that more of the more support for farmers. It's not easy when you have droughts and floods and fire. It'd be, I think, tragic that our industry end up is totally imported as a commodity. I think we have to embrace this fantastic plant, learn about it, touch it more. It goes all the way down to training, whether it's an aspiration of a high school kid who wants to go to uni, to do key agriculture, work in a farm. So that's a bit of a visionary. It'd be wonderful to have more of the supply chain in Australia, and we'll be proud of this great industry, and I think we've got the best environment in the world. The second question?
No, the next 12 months.
Sorry?
So the next 12 months for you, what do you think the industry looks like?
Yeah, well, hearing the amount of proliferation of products is how did that happen? It'd be good to have a bit more of a focused area in the supply chain, and rather than being so open. I think that's actually detrimental. What would be good to see is more clarity in the framework. I think that's been a real sore point. I know, Ian, you mentioned it. We're going blind, and that's a concern. When there's significant investment, there's people, jobs, etc. on the line. So I think that would be really helpful for all of us sitting here in the panel. I think the ability for doctors going into different areas of medical indications and having them have visibility of the benefits of medicinal cannabis, I think we've passed that peak. So this is, I think, optimistic for us that we have a growing industry.
No, I'd agree. And I think to everyone's points is that one of the things that I'm grappling with is how many of our brands, how many of our products. Honolulu presentation this morning talked about more brands and more products over the next 12 months. And then the other piece, which is the downward pressure on price. So all of those things, sort of in my simple economical brain say, there's got to be some form of industry consolidation. So I don't know if you guys saw those presentations this morning, have any comments around it, but it just really struck me as being they contradict each other. We got this narrative around industry consolidation, and then we've got this continued influx of new products and new brands. So what do you think's driving that? What's driving that continued demand or opportunity for more brands and more products? Anybody can pick that one up first. That's a question to anybody who has a thought on that.
Oh, look, just have a quick one. I think as well, like internationally, we've done a great job. You know, the TGA, ODC, again, we're all in this room because of the work Lucy and some of the early pioneers have done to open up the industry, enable access to patients, and you know, really grow. You know, I don't know the size of this room, but it probably feels like it's doubled from last year, right? So again, this is a good story. And I'd love to see us talk a bit more about the good work that's being done, you know, some of the case studies, the clinical work, and the positive outcomes from patients as well. So, yeah, look, I think the international market is seeing the headlines that Australia's doing well, it's growing, you know, again, we don't know revenues and stuff, but it's growing, right? So I think some of those other markets have some real challenges. The Canadian excise tax is a big issue for those guys. They see the Australian market as an opportunity, so they're all coming. Right, that's the reality. And then I think, you know, domestically as well, I think people are interested in the plant and the benefits it has. So I'm all for entrepreneurship, right? I don't want to stymie anyone, but yeah, it's more and more and more.
Reece, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we're still coming off the back of global oversupply with very little friction other than import permit wait times. In the background, we've set up a wholesale and distribution business, Leafio, that's been quite successful. And my advice to new brands that want to enter the market with a white label product is you've left it too late. There's 800 odd products, unless you have and everyone's unique, but unless you have a true point of difference, it's going to be very difficult.
And look, I think that's a terrific point. Sorry, Kristen, you got no. So segmentation and differentiation, you know, typically the ways that you survive. What do you think that looks like? What's the segmentation strategy that you see winning over the next 12 months, or differentiation strategy? All of you.
I'll probably just, if I can, jump back to the last question, just to give a bit of a global perspective. I'm fortunate to work with Aurora. You know, we service 15 different countries, and we've got a really good insight from a global perspective. So I think when you look at it, you've got a lot of companies that have invested a lot of capital in cultivation facilities, extraction facilities, and whatnot. And I think, you know, with the challenges in some of the regulatory, you know, different countries. I mean, we look at Germany. I mean, that's a bit of a diluted sort of regulatory pathway. So I think a lot of those companies that have invested a lot of capital are now looking to go, where is a high growth market? And that is Australia. And I think that's why we're seeing so many entrants come into Australia, because of that opportunity. Again, history is a really good lesson and a good indicator of what is likely ahead. In Canada, there's 900 licensed producers in a market that should really only be able to support 10 to 20. So, you know, 50% of the redundancies in Canada are medical cannabis companies. And I think that's where there's a supply that has far exceeded demand, and the market forces are driving at that equilibrium. And I think that's kind of where Australia is a really good opportunity for a lot of companies, but there's also timing plays a big factor in that. And that's where the barriers to entry are getting a little bit higher.
Absolutely. And you want to pick up the segmentation, differentiation?
Oh, I mean, again, we're breaking new ground here. I think we can look at other markets, you know, and again, the Canadian market is a great example. Started medically, went recreational, and that market's ebbed and flowed, you know, different capital at different points of time. You know, that market now is becoming very pre-roll, infused, joint-led, high distillate vape pen, sort of very, you know, Smirnoff vodka of cannabis kind of driven, which is a bit ugly. But that's not us, we're medical, right? And we operate in a medical system, and so it's got a different lens. You know, we can't just look at a market like that. And really, internationally, Australian medical is leading the way in medical markets now. You know, Germany and all the rest are definitely behind us. So I'm not sure how it plays out.
It's a hard question, because the question is probably as much consumer packaged goods style strategy still in a highly regulated medical market for a patient. So it is a hard question. Sorry, thoughts?
Yeah, just a few thoughts coming to mind that, you know, we've got such a great opportunity in Australia to really be a showcase for the world, but we need obviously the stakeholders, the regulator, the growers, distributors, all the healthcare access to be aligned. So I think we have to join forces with the long term. We hear a lot about political stances. There's elections coming. We hear about recreational, but at the end of the day, we're here to service patients, consumers. This is the most popular drug on the planet from day dot, and it's been very much illicit market of self-medication. So we need to, here we've got a great framework. Let's celebrate the growers. I'm putting on my grower hat. Here it's tough. You know, we have the elements, big investment, but at the end of the day, we want to be proud of our industry. So I would encourage the stakeholders to get together, that we really pull it off and be the best framework in the world. Have a great supply chain where we're employing people in Australia. Obviously, I don't think we'll ever be able, well, I don't say ever, but we'll always be importing product. I think there's a huge time lag to build up supplies and farms, but we've got an opportunity. We have to grasp it as Team Australia in a way.
Yeah, look, I think there's many parallels to the car industry. You know, we had a vibrant car industry for how many years, and yes, it is different because there were tariffs and so on. But again, we had people like to buy an imported car and like people like to drive an Australian car. So can't see there would be any difference for our cannabis industry as well. But it's, the local industry obviously needs to compete with quality and certainty of supply and all those sorts of things. But you're 100% right. That's definitely an opportunity for the Australian part of the business. I'm going to flip it over a little bit. So Ian, you briefly touched on the whole capital question and accessing capital, particularly looking down the road for the next 12 months. How do you see, how do you see companies accessing capital? And maybe Reece, I'll throw you into this one as well, is accessing capital, particularly to fund growth, whether, to this differentiation, segmentation, those sorts of things.
Yeah, look, it's tricky, right? I think globally, macro, all that, won't go there, but it's hard for any industry at the moment. I don't think there's money just freely around. Cannabis certainly had its days, I think if anyone watched the Canadian market, it's pretty wild. The Australian market's got pretty wild there for a while, but that's certainly not the case today. I think there's some great stories of growth in the industry and groups doing well. But yeah, we need to attract capital. And so again, I think as an industry, we've got enough people throwing rocks at us. So again, adhering to regs and quietening down some of that noise around what's going on, cowboys, all that stuff. I just think, one of my big points is around just trying to get a bit of consolidation, one industry body, so that we can truly talk to our regulators and other stakeholders to make sure our industry is tight as possible. And I think if we can do that, it gives us the foundation to attract capital. Because again, in growing companies, there's some very, sort of unsexy elements to working capital, like inventory. You've got to buy inventory, right? And there's a cycle to that, and you've got to get paid, right? And so it's very hard to go to an investor and say, hey, I want a few $1 million to go buy inventory. So again, I think the growth story's there. I think there's a few issues around, regulations and what's happening. But again, I think there's not a lot of capital. The listed markets are tough. I can't see any cannabis IPOs coming up at all, and good luck if anyone gets one away. I think some of the institutions are very much on a watch and see. They've either lost money or trying to work out what's happening with the industry. And we're seeing crowdfund, which is an absolutely appropriate route. I know Reece touched on it. I know the Burley Heads guys used that route early days as well. So look, we all need capital for our businesses to grow and hire people and try to get ahead of the curve. So look, I think at this stage, it's sort of all options are on the table.
Yeah. Reece, thoughts?
Yeah, no, echo many of the sentiments from Ian, and absolutely congratulate the MedRelief guys on an amazing exit. I think what we've seen previously, the gold rush, the capital that was flowing in, the share prices, the inflation, the profitability that just wasn't there. It's amazing to see this today. The crowdfund side of things, I think it's now really, really tough for companies. They need to demonstrate revenue, a very clear and short-term path to profitability, but with the level of competition in the market, both in terms of players, products, level of friction, I think the hardest bit is demonstrating that true, unique point of difference and value proposition. Again, the next 12 months are going to be very interesting. Those that double down on what do we stand for, where do we sit in the industry, what unique value and service do we provide, plus profitability, will be very successful.
So just some of the fundamental stuff, that the mystery of cannabis is probably not enough, or the green rush it was called in 2016, 2017. We're now down to breaking new ground and turning a profit and showing up, a path to return on investment. Any thoughts, Kristen?
No, none from my side.
Okay.
Thanks for the call out.
I'm going to flip it around. So, Tommy, you touched on the local production piece, and we've got this, still heavy reliance on imported product. So how does the next 12 months play out? If you were advising the local producers, and Kristen, I'm going to bring you in this as well because you're not necessarily buying stuff locally, but what would be your advice if I was looking for the local producers to step up to the plate? What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a challenging question because it's I think most of the investment is in growing, and there's obviously a delay on putting a seed in the ground and getting a product release, and you don't know until that COA arrives, actually, did you produce something worth selling? So, it's a bit unfair, I think, for the growers. So it'd be great to have some kind of incentive. I don't know, maybe our government friends find a pot of gold somewhere.
Maybe the money they used to give to the car industry.
So, any incentive to secure local production, then perhaps there'll be more conversations on meeting our local cultivators. Obviously, there's great genetics which take time to develop, but I'm optimistic that we as a country can produce great products here. So the reliance on importing should slowly balance out. I still believe that it'll probably be almost a 50-50 split in the long term, which would be a good outcome.
Absolutely. Yep. Kristen?
We take a really agnostic approach. We source, products, the best products available for Australian patients, wherever that be from. We cultivate at Aurora in Canada. We source from other Canadian growers. We source other countries in the world, and we also source locally. So for us, we have a really agnostic approach. We want to source the best product for Australian patients, wherever that comes from. Medical cannabis is a really, really hard plant to grow at scale, consistently for medical application. And that's where I think, we've got a really good opportunity with Aurora to share some of that knowledge and expertise to help support the local Australian industry really get up and running. I think when you look at other industries as well, or other medicines, 90% of the medicines that come into Australia are imported. So I think, that's where, when you look at antibiotics and vaccines, how's this any different?
Yeah, we've struggled with that, where we need, COVID showed us we need some form of sovereign supply and some protection. A few years post-COVID, we're possibly less sensitive to that as well. So I think, to Tommy's point, there is a mix of imported versus local product. How that settles will come down to range, quality, certainty of supply. Those sorts of the typical supply and demand questions for any industry.
Yeah, Tommy's hit the nail on the head. I think governments need to play their role in supporting the agricultural crops that we grow, and I think they've certainly got a role to play in supporting that, not just industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to take another little sideways turn here because we are at a roundtable. This one's more for Reece and Kristen. So, telehealth has been available for quite a long time. Very slow uptake with particularly primary care, general practice in the metropolitan areas, was working quite well for rural and remote areas. Then COVID hit us, and telehealth has now become, for a lot of practices, the primary way to check in on patients, to keep, like you'll get offered a telehealth consult. Again, the demands on general practice time and getting consultations and all those sorts of things. So my view is the evolution of telehealth has been fantastic for increasing access and, you know, decluttering general practice waiting rooms. It's grown exponentially over the last couple of years, and Reece, you're central to a lot of that. How do you see it going over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think the role of face-to-face consultations will always be there. Complex patients, detailed history taking. I'm not a patient myself. I would absolutely want to go and sit in front of a doctor for an hour and have all my practical, weird and wonderful questions addressed and answered. Telehealth through COVID in particular has played a pivotal role. We've seen a bit of backwards and forwards with the Medicare rebates, but there's also a lot of telehealth businesses that aren't successful as well. The lens of tech as opposed to traditional healthcare, I feel, is what's made us really successful. The way that we feed in data, we make changes very quickly, ultimately to satisfy the patient and the doctor. I think this is going to continue to happen. We've recently switched on consults from, I believe, 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. at night, and they're the most in demand out of any consult time, which tells me patients want the convenience to still receive a very high level of service and very high quality, but for it to fit into their lifestyle. I think for me personally, like, I don't have time to sit in a waiting room for 45 minutes. It's just not possible. So the ability for me to, jump on very quickly, receive a condensed product, still with adjunct support at either end, either side, delivered through, means that are familiar with me, an email popping up with a product usage guide while I'm sitting on a bloody Zoom meeting with Canada. So we intend to continue doubling down on telehealth and also open up a new consultational product type, being those face-to-face consults for those patients like me that would like that and the patients that we don't serve yet.
And so I think you've got one piece of patient feedback, which you open that later window and you're booked out. Any other patient feedback? Because I think sometimes these changes happen and, old farts like me are stuck back in the, every consultation, like the old way or the traditional way. And we don't necessarily move as quickly as the patients do. Patients don't want to wait a week to see a doctor. They don't want to sit in a waiting room for 45 minutes, So any other patient insights or feedback you've had around, the telehealth service?
Generally, all at the moment comes back to cost and accessibility. I think one thing in addition, and it's the awareness piece has been spoken about and bandied about a little bit, but I think if a patient comes to us as a result of something that we've done, goes through the eligibility screening process, then decides maybe it's not for them, and it prompts a conversation with their local managing GP, that's absolutely a win for us. That's a win for the next couple of patients that will come through and ask that GP about their opinion of medicinal cannabis.
Yeah, telehealth, I think, took a really positive step forward through the COVID years. It was a really progressive step forward, and it benefited patients in a really big way. We know doctors are coming on board, but not every doctor is familiar with medical cannabis. I think the telehealth clinic clinics have a really important role there to play in helping with patient access. That remains paramount in my mind. And, convenience is a big driver of a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. And the convenience factor of telehealth clinics, particularly for those that are in regional locations, it makes a big difference. I think from 2020 to 2022, there was 118 million telehealth services that were delivered to 18 million Australian patients. That's staggering. And that just goes to show that the convenience factor is a big driver, and I see that obviously continuing. I think what is really fundamentally important is that the legitimacy of that patient-doctor relationship is upheld, and that's paramount. If that means that the first consultation is face-to-face to build that genuine rapport, and then other consults go to telehealth, that legitimacy needs to be retained for this to continue thriving in a really positive way. But personally, I see it continuing in a really positive space, driven by convenience, as Reece has touched on.
Yeah.
Further to that as well, like I live in a regional community 2 hours out of Melbourne. If I want to have a chat with my GP, I've got to wait 7 weeks unless it's an emergency. So the role of telehealth, I believe, will only continue to grow as shortages of GPs in rural areas continues to grow as well. The other thing we probably haven't spoken about too is the level of burnout that GPs experienced throughout COVID. And we see a huge number of prescribers now that really want the convenience to be able to go into their regular general practice, have that super hands-on face-to-face relationship with their patients, but also the ability to sit in their pajamas on the couch 2 days a week and utilise technology to deliver care.
And look, I think the other point, particularly in the early days of medicinal cannabis, is patients seeing a story and reading about it, or wherever they got their information, going talk to the regular GP and leaving that consultation with really I don't know, the standard, I don't know much about it, I don't know really where to send you. So the patient's left to self-navigate sort of thing. So I think the increase in ability to talk to a trained doctor or pharmacist around medicinal cannabis has been a massive advance for the whole lot of patients, because in any area of medicine, if a patient moves in and out of a practice, doesn't get a diagnosis, doesn't get a treatment, and doesn't get any advice to help, then their path to any sort of recovery is greatly diminished. So I think this evolution of in-person and also telehealth makes a big difference for those patients who are just help seeking. So, which is great. Earlier today, so there was a whole bunch of maybe hysteria is too strong, but when the GMP changes were announced for July last year, the sky was going to fall in. There was a range of things going to happen, and legitimately, probably for some good reasons. There was some non-GMP product coming into the country, all those sorts of things. But it's interesting looking at the data that was presented this morning. Is not much has changed. So I'm interested in your perspectives about why that may be, and do we think that's going to change over the next 12 months? You want to go first, Toy?
Yeah, I'll try. Did the sky fall in? No. I think it was just an evolution of increasing the excellence of the industry. We started at day zero. There was nothing, and we are in a pharmaceutical supply chain. That's where we're playing. So I think that the increase in the quality of product supply is an absolute must. And I think most of the companies have navigated that really well, and that just also increases the quality of the medicine. So all positive.
Yeah, striking the right balance, I think, is what really comes to mind. I think as an industry, we have a responsibility to drive at compliance, and equally so, the regulators have a job to do in balancing the equation and enforcing where compliance is lacking. So I think it's really about just finding the right balance, and that's what remains true.
Yeah, I think we've touched on a couple of different times now quality. I mean, whether that's Australian cultivated goods, international, whatnot. I mean, we can't sacrifice quality. Patient safety is integral to our industry. And so I think the real change we've seen from 1 July, and I don't know who attended the TGA session about this time last year, TGA was at lengths to say compounded flower had no place in the Australian medical industry. Reece today I think was saying 10 to 20%, different people I've heard 20 to 30%. It's a worry in terms of quality products to patients, and it's out of sight. So, look, I think the 1 July regs, the intention was to bring that consistency across the playing field. We know there's still products from pre-1 July in market. How long have they got? Where are they going? Are they being dumped at fire? Who knows, right? So look, that's the change I've seen, is there's been a big swing into compounded products, particularly flour, which I don't understand. And so, look, not great for patient safety.
Yeah, I think quality and consistency has been touched upon. I think the rules and the regulations now are incredibly clear. We're probably waiting on the enforcement across the board of the changes, which will probably shake the tree a bit.
Okay, I'm going to deal with a couple of questions here, because the discussion around industry consolidation is mostly around being a good thing. So what's the negative? Or is it too early to be talking about consolidation? Is this still a brand new nascent market that's still trying to work itself out and it needs a bit more time just to run free before the consolidation happens?
It's an immature market. You know, we've been around for 8 years. So I think with that immaturity, that sort of ultimately, presents, we're a work in progress. There's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot of collaboration, a lot of growth that ultimately needs to happen. So I think, it's probably too soon to talk about consolidation. Yeah, there is an oversupply to demand, but that's where new markets, and you see that in a wide range of industries. It takes time for things to really bed down and for companies to find their niche, their place. And I think those that have joined the industry for the right reasons and are here for the long term will be the ones that survive ultimately. And that comes at the heart of doing the right thing for patients.
Yeah, great. It's early. I think, look, there's good and bad consolidation, right? Bad is when you get two bad companies that are struggling and you put them together in the hope that they survive and then they merge with, that's a sort of death spiral there. I mean, there's good consolidation where you come, with another group that's got great synergies and you say, okay, let's do this and 1 + 1 = 3. That's great. I think, the danger with all that is there is unknowns. But look, at the same point, I don't think there's just going to be a mass rush of consolidation and brands saying, hey, let's just put these all under one big umbrella. I don't see that.
And the difficulty is there's a number of companies that are all in the same spot. So that 1 + 1 = 3 equation is really hard to achieve. So, I think there is some time to run here. This is the last question for all of you. So I'm going to get you to put your futurist hat on and talk about, and this goes into the time capsule, so we'll unseal this in 5 years' time and see how close to the mark you are. But interested in your thoughts around legalisation. What are the steps? Given the previous presentations, what do you guys think? How does it evolve over the next 5, 10 years in Australia? Or 2 to 5 to 10 years, whatever the time frame
Is
is.
this being recorded for your time box? Or?
In the time capsule.
Okay. I think the framework is fine at the moment. You talk about legalisation. It's legal today. I think we need to understand the pressure points. Is it a pharmaceutical script being 6 months? Should it be 12 months? As an example, you cut off a lot of bureaucracy and administration. The same with the access through doctors, Medicare rebate. Is it the one face-to-face? Without a doubt, telehealth will drive our industry. That's what we all want. We want to break the stigma from many decades of prohibition. I think we're over the hill. We're kind of maybe skiing down. I don't know. We still more education, whether it's through universities, etc. But crystal ball, I think. Do we see the pharmacy as the retailer, like the bottle shop is the retailer of alcohol in a very regulated industry? What can we do to be really practical of securing a great industry with great stakeholders without having it maybe too loose? And I don't think we have to do a lot to change the development of this industry.
I wholeheartedly agree with Tommy. We do have a legal market here in Australia, and that's based on timing has a lot to do with it. We are still an immature market, but there's still a lot of education that needs to be done with doctors, pharmacists, and patients. And I think through that immaturity, the education has a vital role to play to making sure that this medicine is considered as such and in a sustainable way for the future growth of our industry. So I hope it stays in the medical framework just so that there is clinical intervention, that we're welcoming patients from the illegal market to have proper clinical interactions with healthcare professionals, and that education means that it's a safe medicine for Australian patients.
Yep, quickly, I think education's great. You know, it being in the medical market, we are educating all those chains, all those people in the supply chains. And again, I think the quality, the system, the frameworks there, there's not a lot wrong with it. Accessibility is getting easier. We're seeing more patients, numbers. I know we don't know exactly what it looks like, but it's going that way. So there's not a lot wrong with it at the moment.
Yeah, and we're still all in the process of learning a lot about it. I think when we fix things like driving laws and make them equitable for patients, we'll see huge changes. I think personally, one thing that's enabled us to be successful is keeping our gaze very low and looking at what's immediately in front of us, being very focused, and then when opportunities present, being incredibly fast and agile. So recreational legalisation is not something that's on our radar or we think a lot about at the moment. In contrast, incredibly excited by legalisation in other medical markets overseas. That the UK is just so exciting at the moment. You know, then you talk about Germany, Poland, France. We're in an incredible position to be able to leverage the almost 5 years of CapEx, OpEx, learnings, tech, data, and then transplant that technology and education into other markets.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Hope you all enjoyed this session, and I'm sure they're all around for more questions at the end, so thanks very much.